turned off the radio. I put on the Mountain Goats. John Darnielle, one of my favorite things about John Darnielle is that even when he performs alone with none of his musical companions, he goes on stage and says, "Hi, we are the Mountain Goats." I'm not a music critic. I pressed the button on my steering wheel that turns off the music and answers the phone, even though I have caller ID and could see that it was my mother. After the conversation had gone on longer than I was comfortable with, that is to say, we had exchanged greetings and were still on the phone, she said, "I'm sorry, am I interrupting anything?" I said, "No, Mom, I was just listening to the Mountain Goats." She said, "Oh, I thought you were in your car." I said, I am in my car." She said, "Why are there Mountain Goats in your car?" I said, "It's a recording, Mom." She said, "Oh, I don't understand that new age thing where people listen to a record of nature sounds, a field of crickets, a pod of whales." I said, "Mom, it's a band." She said, "Honey, I'm pretty sure if it's whales, it's a pod." She said it in that tone of forced patience and condescension with which she corrected me on my grammar when I was 5. I said, "Not the whales, Mom, the Mountain Goats." She said, "That's a herd, dear." That tone, again, I gripped my steering wheel. I listened to my breath. I imagined a bird carrying my anger toward a distant horizon, as my therapist has advised me to do when I speak to my mother. I said, "No, Mom, the Mountain Goats are a band. They play musical instruments and sing post-grunge humanist folk rock." She said, "Oh, that sounds very interesting. I would like to hear that." I said, "I will send you a CD." She said, "Please don't. I wouldn't enjoy it. I was just being polite." And then she said, "Can they even know what it's about?" I said, "Who?" She said, "The Mountain Goats. Do they even know what they're singing about?" I said, "Mom, do you genuinely believe that the conversation we're having right now is actually about mountain goats that have been trained to play musical instruments and sing post-grunge humanist folk rock?" She said, "Oh, Dylan, you're just like your father. It's always subtext, subtext, subtext." I gripped my steering wheel and listened to my breath. Because I am just like my father. She could hear over the line the sound of the subtext and said, "Are you okay? Where did you go just then?" I said, "I'm fine, Mom. I was just imagining a whole flock of crows headed toward a distant horizon." She said, "Oh, you're thinking of a murder, dear." And I said, "Yes. Yes, I am." She said, "Oh, do you want to talk to your father?" I said, "No," but I could already hear the phone being passed. Dad opened with a sigh. I said, "How you doing, Dad?" He said, "Oh, I'm okay. Your mother wants to order 3-piece suits with watch chains for your dogs like the ones you wear." I said, "That's adorable and weird." He said, "That's what I told her." She took it as encouragement. I said, "Dad, is Mom buying suits for my dogs?" He said, "She didn't get that far. She Googled doggy style." Now she wants me to try things. I said, "Dad, are you trying to sell me material?" He said, I wasn't going to charge you for it. Hang on. Your mom says hang on. There was a little bit of muffled receiver covering. And then he came back and said, she said she forgot to ask how you are. I said, I'm fine. I'm having a weird day. I had a troubling meeting. He said, was this one of those stupid television pitching meetings? I said, they're pitch meetings, Dad. And no, but it was like one of those. He said, I don't know how you can live in that venal city with these soulless executives trying to sell your work to these mouth breathers. And I created a table in my head with two columns, one for helpful and one for not helpful, into which I could place what my father said, as my therapist has advised me to do when I speak to my father. And I said, Dad, they're not soulless. They've had to train themselves not to consult their souls when they are doing business. And he said, business? Do you remember in 1992, you called me after a meeting from a phone booth? You remember phone booths? You called me and you said you were all freaked out because in the meeting, some executive had said to you, Dylan, we're not making show art, we're making show business. And I did remember. So I put that in the useful column because it's good to remember who you were. And I said, yes, I remember it, Dad. And maybe if I hadn't been so stoned all the damn time, I might have been present enough to adapt to the needs of the entertainment industry. And he said, entertainment industry. Dylan, entertainment is the word people use when they don't want to take responsibility for what they say through their art. And I created a new column for wise things my father says that I can steal and pawn off as my own. And he said, let me tell you something, Dylan. You are working in an industry that manufactures lowest common denominator, irresponsible art, that is making pro-status quo morality tales in 46-minute hours in the hopes of keeping people staring at their televisions long enough to see advertisements for medications for illnesses that have been wholly created by the pharmaceutical industry. Nobody needs a pill because they have a restless leg. And I put his anger in the not helpful column and then made a lot of little notes around the margins because it seemed like there might be some interesting stuff in there. And he said, Dylan, this is how capitalism ruins everything. It ruins art, it ruins science, it ruins politics, it poisons everything we do. I have been reading a lot of economics lately, Dylan, and I will tell you something. I used to think that the problem with capitalism was that unregulated, it degenerates into feudalism. That's not the problem. That's not the problem, Dylan. The problem with capitalism is it relies on an untenable, pre-industrial, erroneous notion of unlimited natural resources. And I said, Dad, I gotta go.